Hi, my name is Matthew. I remember the impact, the crushing metal, the blinding pain, and then nothing. The silence was unlike anything I had ever known. No weight, no breath, no thought of time. Just an emptiness that stretched into eternity.
But I wasn't gone. On September 14th, 2023, I died. For exactly 6 minutes and 43 seconds, my heart stopped beating after a brutal car accident. Medically, I should have been gone. But what happened in those minutes defies all logic. I saw what lies beyond. I met someone, and he showed me what's coming. Jesus. I don't say this lightly. I was never the type to dwell on faith. My life had been built on power, wealth, and control, the things I could see and touch. But in that moment, stripped of everything, I stood before him. His presence wasn't just light, it was truth itself, radiating into every part of me. And he spoke, not in words, but in knowing. And he showed me what's coming. At first, it looked like progress, the kind of future we've always imagined, a world of convenience, security, and innovation beyond anything we've ever seen. But what I saw next filled me with a fear so deep, so all-consuming, that even now, back in the world of the living, I still feel its weight pressing on my soul. I saw Elon Musk standing before a crowd. He was not just a businessman or a visionary. He was something more, something people had begun to look to for guidance, even salvation. In his hands was a small device, no bigger than a grain of rice. It was sleek, almost insignificant in appearance, but I knew instantly that it was the key to everything that was about to unfold. A solution, he called it, the end of fraud, of identity theft, of inefficiency, the future of human potential. I saw the world embrace it. At first, the microchip was optional, a convenience, a way to streamline daily life. No more wallets, no more passwords, no more forgotten logins or stolen identities. With just a thought, transactions were completed, doors were unlocked, medical histories were accessed. It was perfect, efficient, safe, until it wasn't. Because what I saw next was something darker, something that no one in those early days could have predicted, or maybe they simply refused to see. The chip was no longer a choice. Laws changed. Banks began requiring it for transactions. Businesses refused service to those without it. Governments merged identification with digital access, making the chip the only way to prove you existed in the system. Without it, you were nothing, unbanked, unverified, invisible. And then I saw something that shook me to my core. I saw people who had once believed in God, who had once held on to their faith, slowly, almost imperceptibly, drift away. Not because they had made some grand decision to reject him, but because the connection was severed, little by little. It wasn't just about transactions or convenience. The chip integrated with the mind. It altered perception, subtly reshaping the way people thought, the way they saw the world. Over time, they stopped feeling the pull of something greater. They no longer heard that still small voice. They no longer felt the presence of God. I wanted to scream, to warn them, to tell them that they were trading something priceless for something hollow. That this was not just technology, not just progress, but a deception so perfectly designed that by the time people realized what they had lost, it would be too late. And then I saw myself. I was standing in front of a machine, a scanner. A voice instructed me to place my hand forward. The chip had been implanted. I was about to make a purchase, something simple, a bottle of water, I think. But in that moment, I felt it. the emptiness, a void where something sacred had once been. I looked around searching for a sign of recognition in the eyes of those around me. But they were gone, not physically but spiritually. They moved, they spoke, they functioned, but they were no longer who they once were. The world had changed, and I knew deep in my soul that it could never be undone. But what happened next was even worse. Something so sinister, so carefully orchestrated, that by the time people realized what was happening, it was too late. A future so vivid, so terrifying that even now, back in my body, breathing, living, I can still feel the weight of what I saw. It all started with a promise, a simple, compelling idea: security, efficiency, connection. The chip made life easier, streamlined everything. No more lost IDs, no more bank fraud, no more worry about stolen credit cards or forgotten passwords. It was a perfect system until it wasn't. At first, those who accepted the chip didn't notice the change. They continued their lives, working, shopping, eating, sleeping. But something was missing, something deep, something that was once part of them, but had been quietly erased, stolen in a way so subtle they never even felt it happen. Their faith. I saw them, once passionate believers, people who had spoken of God, of love, of hope, now empty shells of themselves. They no longer prayed, not because they had made a conscious choice to reject faith, but because they simply didn't feel it anymore. The connection had been severed. I watched as they went through the motions of life, speaking in hollow voices, smiling without warmth. It wasn't mind control. It wasn't some dramatic display of obedience to a new power. It was just absence. The absence of what made them human, what gave them depth, what made them alive in a way that had nothing to do with breathing. At first, people didn't understand what was happening. Some noticed that their loved ones had changed but couldn't quite explain how. "He's still himself," they would say. "She's fine, just different." But I knew. I saw what had been taken, and I saw what happened to those who refused. It started with inconvenience. No chip, no access to your bank. No chip, no ability to enter buildings, buy groceries, receive medical care. People without the chip were locked out, not by force, not yet, but by a system designed to make them irrelevant. Then came the ridicule. They were labeled extremists, radicals, conspiracy theorists. The world mocked them, dismissed them. Friends turned away, families split apart. Then came the anger. The ones who had taken the chip, who had lost what they couldn't even remember losing, began to resent those who refused. "Why make things difficult?" they'd say. "Why hold on to outdated beliefs? Just accept it. Everyone else has." But not everyone had. A remnant remained. Small at first, scattered, hidden. They found each other in abandoned buildings, in forests, in places where no cameras, no sensors, no tracking systems could reach. They whispered prayers in the dark, clung to faith like a dying ember, and the world hated them for it. I saw the division deepen, the separation become absolute. There were no more debates, no more arguments over the ethics of it all. There were only two groups, those who had taken the chip and those who refused. And for those who refused, the world had one message: you don't belong here. At first, they were pushed to the edges of society. Then, they were hunted. I saw people dragged from their hiding places, taken into bright, sterile rooms where they were given one final choice: accept the chip or disappear. Some broke. Some gave in, thinking they could resist its effects. They were wrong. The moment it was implanted, They became like the others, hollow. The rest, the ones who held on, who would rather lose everything than surrender what truly mattered. I saw what happened to them, and I wanted to look away. But I couldn't. I wasn't shown this for nothing. I wasn't sent back to keep silent. I am telling you now because the choice is coming. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but soon. The system is already being built. The world is already shifting. And when the moment arrives, you will have to decide, not just whether to take the chip, but whether to hold on to what makes you you. I saw what happens when people forget, when they trade their soul for convenience. And I saw what happens to those who refuse to forget, who refuse to be erased. But the deception is not over yet. As the world tightens its grip on those who refuse to comply, another figure emerges, one no one expects to play a role in what is to come. And in that future, I saw Donald Trump. At first, I didn't understand. I had always thought of Trump as a disruptor, a fighter, someone who stood against the corruption of the world's elites. Many believed he was the only one willing to challenge the system, to call out the deception that had gripped the world. And in my vision, I saw him return to power. The crowds cheered, people wept with hope, believing that change had finally come. But then I saw what came next. At first, Trump spoke the truth, raw, unfiltered truth, the kind that shook people awake. He called out the lies, exposed the agendas, and stood firm against those who sought to silence him. Under his leadership, America seemed to regain its strength. Policies shifted, the economy surged, and global alliances were redefined. But something was different this time.
I saw him surrounded by people, powerful figures from all over the world. Some were familiar, others hidden behind the scenes, yet they all shared a common goal. They spoke of unity, of bringing nations together under one system to prevent future wars, to stabilize the economy, to ensure no crisis could ever again bring the world to its knees.
At first it seemed noble, logical. The world had been fractured for too long, divided by endless conflicts, economic collapses, and chaos. People were desperate for order, for security, and so Trump agreed. I watched as he signed the agreements, one after another. A global economic system, a unified banking network, a political structure that connected every nation under shared governance, a system designed to eliminate fraud, crime, and instability. And at the center of it all, the chip. It wasn't forced at first. It was voluntary, promoted as the ultimate tool of freedom. No more cash, no more stolen identities, no more financial inequality. Every citizen, no matter where they lived, would have equal access to resources, jobs, and healthcare. A world where no one was left behind. And then the shift began. At first it was incentives, lower taxes, better healthcare, exclusive opportunities for those who embraced the new system. Then came the pressure. Banks announced that, for security reasons, they could no longer process transactions without chip verification. Employers required it for payroll, claiming it eliminated fraud. Hospitals transitioned, stating it was necessary for efficiency in medical records and emergency care. Then I saw the laws change. Slowly at first, small adjustments that no one noticed. But one day, I saw Trump stand before the world and say, "It's time for us to move forward. We cannot allow anyone to hold us back. This is the future, and we must embrace it." And just like that, the chip became mandatory. I saw people cheering, celebrating this new era of progress. Blind to what was really happening. They trusted him. They trusted the system, but they didn't see the strings being pulled behind the scenes. Then I saw Trump himself change. The fire in his eyes, the defiance, the unshakable confidence was replaced with something else: doubt, fear, and then acceptance. He had started as the outsider, the one who challenged the system, but now the system had him. Jesus didn't show me exactly how it happened, only that it did. He had been deceived. I wanted to warn him, to shake him, and tell him that this wasn't the answer, that the very people he had fought against had now manipulated him into doing exactly what they wanted. But I couldn't. I was only there to witness, and what I saw next made my blood run cold. I saw the people who refused, the ones who saw through the lie. They were cast out of the system, unable to buy, to sell, to work, to receive medical care. At first, they tried to live off the grid, forming small communities, helping each other survive. But the world had no place for them. And then, the persecution began. Laws were passed, first against economic disobedience, a crime that targeted those who refused to participate in the new system. Then, public endangerment, the idea that rejecting the chip was a security risk. I saw families torn apart, friends turning on each other, people dragged from their homes, taken to facilities where they were given one final choice: comply or vanish. And Trump? I saw him standing alone in a room, staring at his reflection. I don't know if he realized what he had done, if he ever understood the full weight of the agreements he had signed. But I saw regret in his eyes. I wanted to believe he would fight back, that he would undo what had been set in motion. But I wasn't shown that. But the vision didn't stop there. What I saw next was a world transformed, not through war or destruction, but through a quiet, carefully calculated change that reshaped everything humanity had ever known. I saw a world that had changed, one that, on the surface, looked like it had finally found peace. The flags of nations no longer mattered. The conflicts that had defined history were gone. No more wars between superpowers, no more economic rivalries, no more competing ideologies. The United States, Russia, China, and every other major nation had unified under a single system, a single government, a single economy, a single authority. At the center of it all was technology. I saw Elon Musk standing before the world, presenting the final piece of the puzzle. It was brilliant, undeniable in its efficiency. A digital network that connected every nation, every business, every person. A system so advanced that it eliminated corruption, erased inefficiencies, and ensured absolute security. A cashless society. There were no more paper bills, no more credit cards, no more banks in the way. Everything was stored in the chip. Every purchase, every financial decision, every aspect of life was seamlessly integrated into the system. At first it was celebrated. People cheered, relieved that fraud, theft, and financial crises were now things of the past. Poverty disappeared overnight. Everyone had equal access to the economy. No one could be locked out unless they chose to be. But I saw the price of that security. I saw Donald Trump returning to power, delivering speeches about prosperity and progress. His leadership had been the final push needed to unite the world under one economic and political structure. He had fought against the global elite before, but now he stood as the leader of the new order, ensuring that America remained at the forefront of this transformation. I watched as world leaders, once adversaries, stood together, shaking hands, smiling for cameras. It was the moment humanity had dreamed of for centuries, peace through unity. And yet something was deeply, horribly wrong. I could feel it before I even understood it. At first, there was still the illusion of freedom. No one was forced to take the chip, at least not immediately. But society had changed. The world had been restructured in a way that made life impossible without it. People without the chip couldn't access their bank accounts. They couldn't buy food. They couldn't enter buildings that required digital authentication. At first, businesses were hesitant to enforce it, but eventually it became law. I saw families torn apart, parents with chips who begged their children to comply, friends who turned against each other, unable to understand why anyone would reject something so beneficial. Then I saw the enforcers, not soldiers, not men in black uniforms, just ordinary people, store clerks, bank tellers, security guards. The system had been designed so perfectly that no one needed to be forced into compliance. Society itself became the enforcer. No chip, no service. Those 5 words became the defining law of the new world. I saw entire communities disappear. The ones who refused to conform were pushed out. No jobs, no homes, no means of survival. They fled to the outskirts, forming small, hidden groups, trying to survive with what little they had. And then I saw the drones. They scanned every street, every building, tracking movements, monitoring conversations. There was nowhere to hide. The system was all-seeing, all-knowing. Those who lived outside of it were labeled as threats, not criminals, not terrorists, just problems that needed to be dealt with. I saw them taken. One by one they were found, rounded up, and given a choice: accept the chip and be reintegrated into society, or be erased from the system entirely. Some took it, believing they could resist its influence. They were wrong. The moment it was implanted, something changed in them. I could see it in their eyes, the way the light faded, the way their expressions became distant, robotic. They weren't controlled. They weren't brainwashed. They had simply lost something: their faith, their connection to something greater. I wanted to scream, to warn them, but I couldn't. I was only an observer, a witness to what was coming. And then I saw the final moment. Trump stood at a podium, the world watching as he signed the last piece of legislation that made the chip universal, irreversible. His face was unreadable. Was he convinced he was doing the right thing? Did he know he had been deceived? Or had he become part of the deception himself? But just when I thought the world had reached its final transformation, I saw the true purpose of it all. The final step in the deception, one that went beyond control of the body and reached into the very essence of the soul. I thought I had already seen the worst of it. I thought the economic system, the global unification, the persecution of those who refused the chip was the final stage of the deception. I was wrong. There was something far darker. At first, the chip was just a tool, a way to streamline society, to eliminate inefficiencies. But then they took it further. The integration was no longer about convenience. It was about control. I saw them demonstrating the next phase of the technology: neural synchronization. The chip wasn't just linked to your finances or identity anymore. It was connected directly to the brain, to thoughts, to emotions. At first, they marketed it as an enhancement, a breakthrough in medical science. No more depression, no more anxiety, they said. No more violent impulses, no more crime. Behavioral modifications were introduced as a choice, optional upgrades that allowed people to become their best selves. Then the updates became automatic. I saw people change. Not overnight, not all at once, but gradually, as if parts of them were being erased one line of code at a time. The fire of individuality, the spark of self-awareness, the ability to question, it was being dulled, softened, until there was nothing left but compliance. People stopped resisting, not because they had been physically forced, but because they no longer wanted to resist. The chip recalibrated their emotions, their thoughts, their very desires. They accepted what they were told without question, without hesitation. And they were happy, or at least they believed they were happy. I saw entire cities of people who no longer had the capacity for independent thought. They smiled, they worked, they functioned. But they weren't truly alive. The essence of what made them human, what made them capable of faith, of love, of free will, it had been rewritten. And then I saw the churches. I thought, surely the faithful will resist. Surely the houses of God will stand against this deception. But I was wrong again. The religious institutions had been infiltrated, twisted into something unrecognizable. They no longer spoke of free will, of salvation, of truth. They had adapted to the system. They preached compliance, obedience, submission. The chip is a blessing, they told their congregations. It is the key to unity, to peace. God wants us to evolve. I watched as pastors, priests, and religious leaders, people who had once stood for faith and righteousness, betrayed their own beliefs, urging their followers to accept the integration, to become one with the new world. And the people obeyed. They trusted the voices that had once led them to truth, never realizing that those voices had been silenced and replaced by something else, something artificial, something controlled. I wanted to scream, to shake them awake, to tell them that this wasn't faith, it was programming, that they weren't being led to God, but to something else entirely. But I could do nothing. I was only there to witness. And then I saw the ones who refused. They were hunted, not with guns, not with violence, but with algorithms. Their minds were mapped, their behaviors predicted. Every attempt they made to hide, to resist, was countered before they could even act. The system knew them, understood them, and used that knowledge to dismantle them from within. Some were captured and given one final chance. Accept the chip and be welcomed back, or be erased. Some chose to live as outcasts, scraping by in the forgotten corners of the world, whispering prayers in the dark, clinging to the last fragments of their souls. And then I saw myself. I was standing in front of a mirror, staring at my own reflection. My hand trembled as I reached up to my temple, feeling the cold, unnatural sensation of the chip embedded beneath my skin. But the vision wasn't over. As I stared at my reflection, feeling the cold weight of what had been done to me, I was shown what came next. A world that, on the surface, seemed whole, yet beneath it, something was terribly, irreversibly broken. At first, I didn't understand what I was seeing. The world looked the same, yet different. People were smiling, working, going about their lives as if everything was normal. But beneath the surface, something was deeply, horribly wrong. It all started with a system. At first, it was just technology, something designed to make life easier, more efficient. A small implant, a chip that allowed instant transactions, secure identification, seamless access to everything a person needed. It was convenient, safe, foolproof. And then it became something more. The chip wasn't just about money. It became the key to existence itself. Without it, you couldn't buy food. You couldn't pay your bills. You couldn't even step into a hospital or board public transportation. Society itself was restructured around this new system until those without it were nothing. Ghosts, invisible, locked out of the world. I saw the people who accepted it. At first, they seemed no different. They laughed, they talked, they worked, they went to church. But then I looked deeper, and I saw what had been taken from them, their souls. Not all at once, not in some dramatic moment of possession. It was gradual, almost imperceptible, like a slow poison sinking into the blood. Their faith faded. Their thoughts became uniform, their emotions dulled. They no longer questioned anything. They no longer felt the pull of something greater. They no longer felt God. And worst of all, they didn't even realize it. I wanted to turn away, to escape from what I was witnessing. But Jesus wasn't finished. He showed me the churches. Surely, I thought, the church would resist. Surely the pastors and priests, the faithful who had stood for God, would see the truth. They would speak out. They would fight. But I was wrong. I saw pulpits where the gospel had once been preached, now delivering a different message. Embrace the system. Trust the leaders. This is the future God wants for us. They had been deceived. Not all of them, but many. Enough that the deception spread like wildfire. The voices that had once called for repentance, for truth, for courage, now urged their congregations to comply. And people did. They lined up outside churches, receiving their implants in the very places where they had once received communion. They praised God as they were branded. They called it progress, a sign of faith, a way to be good stewards of the new world. I wanted to scream, to shake them awake, but they couldn't hear me. Then I saw the ones who refused. They were few, scattered, hiding in abandoned buildings, in forests, in the shadows of the world. They had no money, no homes, no access to the society they once knew, but they still had their souls. And for that, they were hunted. I saw the world turn against them, not with weapons or force, but with something far worse. They were mocked, labeled as extremists, as radicals, as dangers to progress. Their own families turned them in, convinced they were lost, that they needed to be helped. I saw them dragged away. Some were taken to facilities where they were given a choice: accept the mark and be welcomed back, or disappear. Some chose the mark, believing they could resist its influence. They were wrong. The moment it was implanted, the light in their eyes faded. The moment it was implanted, they were lost. And then I saw the final moment. A world fully connected. A world at peace. A world where no one questioned, no one resisted, no one disobeyed. A world completely enslaved. And at the center of it all, I saw him. Not Jesus, something else. Something that stood in his place, claiming to be truth, claiming to be salvation. Something that the world worshipped without realizing what it was. And then the vision shifted once more. I saw a world that had embraced its new order, a world that, on the surface, seemed perfect. But underneath, the cost of that perfection was more horrifying than anything I had seen before. At first, the world looked peaceful, orderly. There were no wars, no protests, no chaos in the streets. The system worked. Every nation was unified. Every person had access to food, shelter, and health care. There was no crime, no corruption. At least that's what they wanted everyone to believe. But beneath the surface, there was something deeply wrong. It started with the chip. At first, it was a choice, a simple, logical solution to security and efficiency. No more cash, no more fraud, no more economic disparity. The world ran on a single unified system, and those who accepted it were promised safety, prosperity, and a place in the new society. And those who refused, they became nothing. I saw them, people who had spent their lives working, building, contributing to their communities, instantly erased from the system. Their bank accounts were frozen. Their homes were taken. Without the chip, they couldn't buy food. They couldn't get medical care. They couldn't even enter most buildings. They were cast out, not by soldiers, not by force, but by the very society they had once belonged to. At first, the world ignored them. They made their choice, people said. Why should we care? Then the ridicule started. They were mocked, labeled as extremists, as conspiracy theorists, as people too stubborn to move forward. News reports painted them as dangerous, as a threat to global stability. They were called selfish, irresponsible, even mentally unstable. Families turned against each other. I saw children begging their parents to take the chip. Please, they sobbed, just do it. We're starving. I saw husbands and wives split apart. One took the mark, the other refused. One was welcomed into the new world. The other was left behind, forced to watch their family disappear into a life they could no longer be part of. And then the fear set in. People who had once resisted began to break under the pressure. They watched their children cry from hunger. They saw their friends vanish, taken away in the night. They faced the whispers of neighbors who once called them friends, but now saw them as threats, and many gave in. I saw them step into clinics, into government centers, into churches that had long abandoned their true purpose. They held out their hands. The chip was implanted, and in that instant, something changed. The fear left their eyes. The worry, the doubt, the desperation. It was gone. They smiled. They reassured those around them that everything was fine. I feel great, they said. I don't know why I waited so long, but I knew why. Because they had lost something they would never get back. Not just their freedom, not just their independence, their soul. I saw the ones who refused, the few who still held on. They lived in hiding, moving through shadows, whispering their prayers in abandoned buildings and deep forests. They clung to each other, sharing what little they had. They spoke in hushed voices, reading from old tattered Bibles, knowing that their faith alone would sustain them. And for that, they were hunted. I saw the raids. I saw drones scanning the streets, reading heat signatures, tracking movement, identifying those who had refused to be marked. I saw neighbors turning on each other. It's for their own good, they told themselves as they reported the resistors. They'll be safer once they're part of the system. I saw them dragged from their hiding places, forced to their knees, given one final choice. Take the chip and you can go home, be with your family again, have your life back. Some took it, and just like the others, they changed. The fire in their eyes went out. The last remnants of who they were, their convictions, their faith, their very will, were erased in an instant. But some refused. I saw them marched away, their faces set with quiet defiance, their hands bound behind them. They didn't fight. They didn't scream. They knew what awaited them, but they also knew something greater. But even in the midst of this darkness, when it seemed as if all hope was lost, I was shown something else, something that changed everything. For 6 minutes and 43 seconds, I was gone. My heart stopped. My body lay still. But my soul was taken somewhere beyond this world, beyond time itself. I stood before Jesus. He didn't need to speak. His presence was truth itself. In an instant, I understood everything. I saw the deception that was coming, the world embracing technology over faith, surrendering freedom for security. I saw the mark that would enslave humanity, the persecution of those who refused, and the churches that had abandoned the truth. But Jesus also showed me something else, a refuge. I saw a hidden place, untouched by the world's system, a place where the faithful, those who had refused the chip, who had chosen God over the lie, were living in peace. It wasn't a city, nor was it built by human hands. It was something beyond explanation, shielded from the eyes of the world. I saw miracles sustaining them, food appearing where there was none, water flowing from dry ground, sickness healed with nothing but prayer. These people had nothing by the world's standards, no money, no technology, no access to the system, but they had everything they needed. And I saw angels. They stood at the borders of this place, unseen by those who hunted the faithful, but fierce against any force that tried to harm them. The armies of the world searched for these believers, yet they remained hidden, as if they had simply vanished from the earth. Jesus turned to me, and I felt his urgency. "Warn them," he said. "Tell them before it's too late." I was shown how easily people would be deceived, how they would trust in technology, in leaders, in solutions that promised peace but delivered enslavement. How even those who once claimed faith would be led astray, choosing comfort over truth. "I am coming soon," Jesus said. "Tell them to prepare." And then just as quickly as I had left, I was back, gasping for air, my heart beating once more. I wasn't sent back for myself. I was sent back for you. This isn't a theory. This isn't a possibility. It is coming. The world is already shifting. The deception is already taking hold. You must choose. Will you trust the system or will you trust God? Because once the choice is made, there is no going back. I saw what's coming, and soon you will too. I died. I left this world for 6 minutes and 43 seconds, and in that time, I was shown a truth most people refuse to believe. A system is being built. A plan is already in motion. Technology will not just control your assets, your identity. It will control your mind, your will, and your soul. Those who accept it will never be the same again. But those who refuse, they will be cast out, hunted, erased. I saw two paths. One leads to false security, to empty promises wrapped in progress, and in the end, destruction. The other is a narrow road, difficult and full of trials, but it leads to life, to God's protection, to a place where the faithful will not be abandoned. You can feel it. You can see the world changing. This is no longer a distant theory. It is happening now.
I wasn't sent back to stay silent. I was sent back to warn you. Leave a comment, share this message, subscribe to this channel so you don't miss what I am about to reveal. Because time is running out, stand firm, keep your faith, and remember, Jesus is coming.